Gosh.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed a great honor and pleasure to have with us Venerable Sarah Thresher, who has been a very, very devoted student of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our spiritual director of all the FPMT centers in the world. Today, Venerable Sarah is going to share with us her memories or experiences with Venerable Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and we are really looking forward to it. After the tea break, we'll be offering some prayers for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And now just a brief introduction to Venerable Sarah Thresher. Venerable Sarah Thresher was born in London, UK. After graduating from the university in 1982, she traveled to India and Nepal, where she met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan Monastery. She has studied with many great masters and was ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Bodhgaya in 1986. Venerable Sarah worked as an editor for wisdom publications and started teaching the Dharma throughout the world in 1992. These days, she is mostly based in Nepal. So we look forward to your stories about our very dear Venerable Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Accepting to come and share your stories with us.
Thank you, Nika. Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. I haven't been to the Delhi Center for about 10 years. And I wasn't planning on coming. But then Nico invited me and he said, oh, you must come and you must teach. And I said, well, I haven't been teaching recently. Then he said to me, oh, well, then lead prayers for Rinpoche. And then that was very hard to turn down. You know, that was, because it would be really nice if I come and we do prayers. I was here about the last time, one of the last times I was here actually, Venerable Samson was here. It was my birthday, Kabir was here. Rinpoche was giving the transmission, the Golden Light Sutra. And Venerable Samson bought a birthday cake for me. And do you remember, Renuka? Yes. Rinpoche was sitting there. And so I thought it would be really nice to come back. And if we do some prayers together. And it's hard to turn Nico down. And I know that Delhi Center is always so important for Rinpoche. For years and years and years, always been so important. Renuka taking care like a mother. And so we put this together, and the idea was just, I thought, okay, I'll share like 1 or 2 stories, and then everyone else can share stories. Now Renuka's saying to me, you tell all your stories. So I feel like I'm put on the spot. But as I was saying to Renuka, when I arrived yesterday, this center is just a storehouse of memories for me about Rinpoche. Rinpoche spent so much time here. And just when I saw Renuka, more stories started coming. So anyway, I thought I would tell 1 or 2. And, you know, they always say that the life stories of the great masters are very revealing because they contain things that the teachings don't contain. Yeah. And they're living experiences that we have had. So I'm looking forward to hearing stories that you have. Have you met Rinpoche? Did you meet Rinpoche? No. Okay. Well, if you did, I'm looking forward to listening to some of your stories because I learn such a lot when I hear from people about their experiences. Okay. All right. So I'm not planning to do any prayers to begin. Just go in. I'm going to start with yesterday. Yesterday I arrived at Delhi airport. Wow, it's huge. It's enormous. And I came through to immigration. It was very fast. I couldn't believe it. No buses, no getting on buses to bring you to the terminal. Just straight out and no crowds and everything really nice. And came to the immigration very quickly and came through. My baggage was waiting for me. And as I passed through the immigration, which was very fast, I had an e-visa, it was very fast. The man processed it so quickly, and then I looked at him and I said, "Is it finished?" He said, "Yes." He's kind of young, nice young man, right? And I looked at him and I said, the first time that I came to Delhi was 1982. When I arrived at the airport, they stamped in my passport 49-year visa on arrival. 49 years.
49 years?
Pachas minus one. 49 years. Yeah. Yeah, I thought you'd like. If you don't know that, I thought you'd like that story, because I always get gasps of astonishment when I tell people. People who know, because those days everybody wanted to be British, because we had this 49-year visa on arrival. So obviously it wasn't this Indira Gandhi airport. It was the old Delhi airport. Malam airport, yeah. And I arrived early in the morning, and I didn't want to come into the city, so I just slept at the arrival. And then around breakfast time, I got on a rickshaw, auto rickshaw. Those days we also had the cycle rickshaws, and there were ambassadors, but it was a very, very different Delhi. And went to Connaught Place, to Ringo's guest house. With my 40, so they stamped him. So I said to the immigration officer, I said, this is what you do when you get old. You tell people stories, and they look at you like, oh, okay, fine, because it's unrelatable. But they stamped in my passport 49-year visa, and I looked at it and I thought, okay, I can stay in India 49 years, then I'll walk across the border to Nepal, walk back again, and get another 49 years, and that's my life. So obviously it didn't happen like that. After Indira Gandhi was assassinated, there was reciprocation against anyone with a British passport, and it became the hardest passport actually to come to. But that's my story when I first came today. So 1982. And I arrived here. I was looking for something. I had been looking for something for years, but I had no idea what I was looking for. 5 weeks later, I met Rinpoche and Yeshe. Mainly Rinpoche. I'm going to say mainly Rinpoche. And I had found what I'd been looking for, which was Rinpoche. But the process to finding Rinpoche was very much about being in India, and this powerful country. I think I was 3 days in Delhi. Mm-hmm. You remember Delhi in the 80s? Yes. I was very much, I had been reading Indian authors, and I was very much thinking of Heat and Dust, Ruth Pravada Jaman. You remember? Yeah. In fact, when you watch the movie Heat and Dust by Merchant Ivory, you can see the kind of world that Delhi was those days. Very different, yeah. And there were no mobile phones, and there were no...
We still have the heat and the dust.
You still have the heat and the dust. But they used to say that, when you arrived in India, the first thing you noticed was the smell, the scent, not of gasoline or pollution, spices. The spices and the incense. That was the first thing that would strike people when they arrived, yeah. And it was just such a different world from the world that I had come to. And so those days, obviously, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have many phones, actually. And we didn't have ATMs, and we didn't have all these instant connection things we didn't have. So I was traveling with all my money and traveler's checks with a money belt tied around my stomach. I was 3 days in Delhi, and then I met some people from England the first night who'd been traveling in India for years and years, which was what happened those days, yeah? You had a 49-year visa, and there were certain places you went. So you went to Taj Mahal, and you slept under the arches on the full moon days, and smoked dope. Not me, but this is what the travelers are doing. You went up and stayed in a houseboat in Jammu Kashmir. You went to Rishikesh, and you went to Calcutta to shake hands with Madame Teresa and see the work she was doing. That later changed to you went to Dharamsala to shake hands with the Dalai Lama. And that became one of the most popular places. Anyway, so these guys from the UK, they were just permanently traveling in India. And they said to me, if you're going to stay in India for a while, you should start drinking the water. And every guidebook I had said, never drink the water and never drink anything with ice. Because so anyway, I followed their advice. And those days, you know, we didn't have bottled water. You had to tell people to boil it. And we had iodine drops. And what else? No, basically you had to boil the water. We had iodine drops and water purifying tablets. So you would travel with water purifying tablets. So I drank the water.
And you had to have malaria pills.
Malaria pills. And 2 days later, I went third class to Varanasi and collapsed in the street. Huh? Sorry. So I collapsed in the street, completely helpless in the gutter of Varanasi, and with all my money strapped around my middle, and I was alone. I was 22 years old. And I was very fortunately, an American student passed by who was studying at BHU, picked me up, took me back to her, where she's her music teacher, who had rooms they let out to foreigners, and they were teaching sitar and tabla and singing. I stayed there for a month, and they nursed me back to health. And being in Varanasi woke something up inside me and prepared me for Nepal. And then I spent time at the Ganges, the Ganga, and then went to Nepal and met Rinpoche. So I always think like India was a place where I was prepared, you know, to meet Rinpoche. Okay, so that's just a little bit about, you know, my long connection with India. And then I thought I would tell a story about when I first met Rinpoche. So I actually went up to Kopan to escape Kathmandu. It was very quiet and peaceful up there. And I was traveling with someone. We ended up in Freak Street. And it was so noisy and so dirty and so chaotic. And he wanted to do the course at Kopan with Buddhists. And I had no interest in Buddhism or anything like that. I was not interested in that kind of thing. But I thought I'll walk up there and have a look, see what it's like. And so we walked across fields all the way from Kathmandu to Kopan. So if you know Kopan now, and it's basically becoming a suburb of Kathmandu. It's all built up. In those days, it was fields. And people kept pointing to a hill when we asked them, where's Kopan? Anyway, we got there, and there was a few days before the course started. And it was so peaceful and quiet. I thought, well, I'll just come and stay a few days before the course starts, you know, just think about what I'm doing and where I'm going. And of course, I ended up doing the course.
Who was the teacher?
Rinpoche. Rinpoche taught everything. From early morning to late night, it was Rinpoche. And whether you could understand what Rinpoche was saying or not, didn't matter. You were just mesmerized. And so I think the thing that really struck me, so there's many stories, but I just wanted to tell this one. Those days, the course was held in a tent. You probably heard about the famous tent. And the tent was made of bamboo. They used to put it up at the side of the hill. It was made of bamboo, and that bamboo struts, and then bamboo weave, and then corrugated iron on the roof, and you know, that kind of sackcloth around it. And then inside they put down those bamboo mats that we used all the time in the old days. We never had floors and carpets, always bamboo mats. And then they put a throne for Rinpoche and some tangas up, and then we all sat on the floor. And And so I remember when Rinpoche started coming to teach. And first of all, he had the appearance of someone who was completely not in this world. And the only way that I could relate to Rinpoche was from my own background was, oh, this is what Jesus must have looked like. You know, I had no other reference points. But he clearly was, there was nothing at all ordinary about Rinpoche. Yeah, I mean, he had 2 arms and 2 legs and a head like us, but I had never in my life experienced anything like that. And, you know, after Lama Yeshe passed away, Rinpoche did change and became much more friendly. Not friendly, just more kind of relatable. I don't know quite how to put it. You know what I'm saying? Sort of like, but those days Rinpoche seemed so like he was really living in some other dimension, which is a bit scary for us. So I remember Rinpoche came in to give a talk, and when Rinpoche would come in, we had to stand up. So here we are, this bunch of Western people. We're not used to showing respect. Kind of, I don't know if Western people changed. Those days were very, very, thought we knew everything and very, so we had to stand up for him. So Rinpoche would come in and we'd stand up, and then Rinpoche would make 3 prostrations, also very foreign for me. And then he would get onto the throne and sit down. And then we could sit down. We didn't have to make prostrations. We could just sit down. So I remember Rinpoche came in and we stood up and he started making prostrations. And then suddenly he picked something up and we're all standing up waiting. He picked something up and he walked outside the tent. What's he doing? And then gradually it dawned on me that he'd picked up an ant. Why would anyone pick up an ant? You know, I'd never ever seen something like that in my life before. That somebody would, especially someone that we're respecting. I mean, have you ever seen a prime minister or president or someone that, you know, stoop down while everyone is paying respect and pick up an ant? So he picked up the ant, took it outside, blew mantras, and then put it. I think that just destroyed my Western mind. So it's not a big story, but it's just a small story. And I think many people had that experience with Rinpoche, that incredible unconditional love and caring for every single being. You know, as Rinpoche used to say himself, from the smallest, tiniest insect to the hugest whale. I remember later on, you know, many years later, having the courage to say to Rinpoche, you know, Rinpoche, I really love you, right? Which is what we felt from our hearts. One time I was in Taiwan and there was a little girl. We were all waiting for Rinpoche to come and teach. Rinpoche came out and this little girl ran up to Rinpoche and she threw her arms around him with such affection. And Rinpoche just put his arms around it. And it's like everybody in the room wished they could do that. Because we just all felt unconditionally loved. And so I remember plucking up the courage once and saying, Rinpoche, I love you so much, you know. And Rinpoche looked at me and said, if you love me, you must love all sentient beings. So I think if you know Rinpoche, then you know that that's the teaching. Yeah, that's Hi, Venerable. So I wanted to share that. Do you want to come and sit next to me? Does he want to come and sit next to me? Yeah. Just come and sit next to me, yeah. 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 So that was you know, we don't normally live in the presence of people who love all sentient beings. I mean, genuinely, completely. Or love us unconditionally. Totally unconditionally. And then I wanted to tell those two stories. The one about the ants, which is the one that first really got me. And the second one about that. And then the third story that I wanted to share. So we're just sharing. The third story I wanted to share was, and this is one I find very useful. I always forget this, and I must always remind myself of it. So I hope that you'll find this useful as well. And this was one time I was in, I was leaving Kopan, and Rinpoche was at Kopan in his room, and I went to offer a kata and say goodbye. And managed to get permission to see Rinpoche. It wasn't always easy, remember. And so I went to say goodbye to Rinpoche, and there I am, full devotion, right? But genuine. I wasn't faking it, full devotion. And I looked at Rinpoche and I said, Rinpoche, please, if there's anything that you ever want me to do, this is what happens when you have full devotion. Be careful. If there's anything that you ever want me to do, please tell me, right? And Rinpoche looked at me, and this little smile came on his face. And then he leaned over and he said, I want everything you don't want. Did you get that?
That's what it said. You didn't add anything?
It didn't need to, because I got it. Did you get it? I mean, this when we talk about unconditional love, we're not talking about, oh, you're so wonderful, what can I do for... No. We're talking about someone who their main concern was your spiritual progress, right? I want everything you don't... What is it we want? We always want what we want to happen, right? We want everything to go the way we want it to go. We want it to happen the way we want it to happen. We want it to be the way we want it. But Rinpoche, don't you think this should happen? They shouldn't be doing this. That person's criticizing me. And then after I left, I remember things started happening which I didn't want to happen. And I was like, why is this happening? And why is this happening to me? But I had told the story because I was so struck by what Rinpoche had said. I told the story to another nun. And then I remember I was talking to this other nun and saying, I can't understand why this is happening. And why is that happening? And they looked at me and said, remember Rinpoche said to you, he wants everything you don't want. And somehow, if you can just remember that, when things are going the way you don't want them to go, suddenly you realize that everything is perfect. And that this is, what do they say? The compassion of the Guru is when everything's going well. The love of the Guru is when things are going difficult. But you can use it for your practice. Because ultimately it's about practicing and developing. So I want everything you don't want. I have to always remind myself of that. It's also, that happened to me another time actually, with another teacher, River Rinpoche. River Rinpoche was a great master, and he was one of Rinpoche's teachers. So the incarnation is now with us. But he was very close to Rinpoche, River Rinpoche, and he had been he stayed in Tibet when the Chinese communists came, and he'd been tortured and imprisoned, and he'd been through many different Tamsing sessions, so public torture, public shaming sessions, things like this. And he'd used all of this. It's hard to say he used it, but I think he would say himself he used it. But he developed this incredible, he was just an incredible being because he'd gone through this and he'd used it. And I remember one time going to see him, and I was working at a center at that time. We all know what it's like working at centers. It can be very difficult. And I went to visit Rinpoche, and I came in the room, and he told me, he was sitting on the settee, what do you call it, couch in American, chair like that. And I went to sit on the floor, and he said, no, you sit here, sit on the chair next to him. And then he said to me, and how are things at the center? And I was just about to open my mouth and say, well, this is difficult and this is difficult. And he didn't let me speak. He just said, there is never any reason for anyone, right? There is never any reason for anyone who is practicing thought transformation to ever be unhappy about anything. Now, that's a very strong statement. And then he went on to explain it. He said, if you're feeling sick, something physically wrong, well, that's just an opportunity to practice patience. And if someone is giving you a hard time or they're not doing what you want, well, that's just another opportunity to practice thought transformation. And if you think about it, that's it. There's no wiggle room. So when Rinpoche says, I want everything you don't want, basically, that is the emanation of the ego. That is it. You know, so if you're in a difficult situation, you think, I don't want this, it's the I that is rejecting the situation, which is the opportunity to practice, right? It's the I. You've just caught your eye. So now you understand, right? He didn't need to say any more than that. Because I knew what he was saying to me. He was saying to me, I want you to grow. I mean, he wanted us to become like him. He wanted us to have this unconditional love and this blissful mind, this continually blissful mind, that you can share with others, and bring others onto the path of happiness. Okay, so that was really the stories I wanted to share. And then when Renuka came in my room, she reminded me of one other story, so I think I'll tell it. And then I hope other people will share. And that is, probably this is about 20 years ago. And because this center's been here a long time. This center is
79, since 79.
Oh, and I remember the two previous, I remember Shantiniketan and the previous centers. So I think it must have been around around 2000s, and Rinpoche was staying here up in the room up there, and I was on my way to Nepal, and I came to see Rinpoche, and I managed to get in, and I just wanted to offer a kata and have say hello to Rinpoche, and I did, just very quick. And then I told him I'm going to Nepal, and then I left. And as I was walking down this pathway to leave, Roger came running out of the door, and he said, wait, did you get your high griva? I said, what? He said, Rinpoche wanted to give you a high griva protection. I said, no, I didn't get that. He said, wait, I'll go and get you one. And Roger ran upstairs, he came down, and he gave me this little high griva protection from Rinpoche. And I put it in my belt, my money bag, and my belt, and my jola. Yeah? And then I flew to Nepal. And I got in a taxi, and I drove to the center that we had at that time, which is in, I've forgotten the area, near Lazimpat, anyway. And I came out and went upstairs and found my bed and went into the Gompa and did some prayers, and that was it for about 2 hours. And then the center, they locked the door and they put the big bar on it, and it was dark, and suddenly there was this bang, bang, bang on the door. Bang, bang, and we're like, we're closed, go away. Bang, 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 let me in. And I would go away, we're closed. I said, you have a nun in there. what? Yeah, so? Bang, bang, let me in. What's going on here? So they opened it and it was a taxi driver. He said, you have a nun in here. I brought her from the airport. So what? I mean, what's your problem? He said, she left her bag in the taxi. I said, no, I didn't. Her bags are upstairs in the bedroom. What are you talking about? And then he lifted up. He had my jola, all my money, my passport, every single thing was in that jola. And I hadn't noticed. I was so shocked, you know. I just gave him something, and then I couldn't even think clearly. So what happened is, he explained that he dropped me off, and then he went right over to Patan, and he had two other customers, and the other customers got out holding my bag, and he grabbed it. He said, "That's not yours." And they said, "No, it's ours, it's ours." He grabbed it off them, jumped in the car, and then raced back to the center to try and find me. And the center was closed, so he was banging on the door saying, "This is yours." And I hadn't even noticed. I mean, now that's kind of miraculous, right? Every single thing was in it. And then, of course, that evening I remembered Raja coming running out saying, "Rinpoche wanted to give you this high grade of protection," and I put it in the bag. Because he could just have driven off. I had no thing. Anyway, so that was the story that came when you came around. So please, I do hope that some other people are going to share now. Let's start with Renuka. Please share some stories. Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable. That was very educative for us and inspiring. So we should focus on our practice, basically. I think that's the gist of it. I would like to share with you, first of all, one very strong impression I had of Venerable Sarah vis-a-vis Rinpoche. I think I'm going to begin with that.
Oh dear.
Rinpoche used to stay with me at my place, and that time I think he stayed with me for about 2 weeks. And Venerable was staying here at the center, and she would come every day, every night to work with Rinpoche. He would dictate his letters or whatever work Rinpoche was doing. She was serving Rinpoche day and night. This is what I remember. But one day, it had rained so heavily in Delhi, you cannot imagine. And I think it was around maybe 10:30, 11 in the morning. Knee-deep water. She waded through that water, I remember. And she came to my house. I opened the door and I looked at her as if, what is this? You should have stayed back, But that's when I felt, my God, when she has to serve her guru, she will get rid of all the obstacles in her life and she'll be there for Rinpoche. I thought that was very moving. And did I offer you a cup of tea? I'm not sure. Probably I did. So this is her devotion. She has really served Rinpoche day and night. And about Rinpoche, it is so hard for me to actually say something because I've had a very, very close association with Rinpoche. In a nutshell, I can just say that Rinpoche taught me how to be devoted to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That is the biggest lesson he came to teach me. And also, he said that, Renuka, for you, the practice is to run the center, no matter what happens. So I am trying to follow his advice. But recently, last month, I dreamt twice about Rinpoche, and I think it's a very good sign. I have a feeling Rinpoche is coming back soon.
I think so too.
Yeah, thank you. I find it very hard to, express my feelings towards Rinpoche. He was there for everyone. Yeah. Like Venerable said, unconditional love for everyone. Thank you.
Sarah, would you like to add something to that? Or maybe we can ask Wangdu also to share a story about Rinpoche?
No, I mean, Renuka's devotion is really, it's in the action. It's in the action. Should I turn this around?
No.
No. It's in the action, isn't it? And there's no need to express it, right? It's in her actions.
What stories do you want to share? Maybe.
I mean, yeah, there's one tiny story that I remember from one of the last times I saw Rinpoche in Dharamsala. It was just in March 23. The Rinpoche visited Tushita for the last time, actually. And Rinpoche invited all of us for lunch to trek and dine, so the whole Tushita team. So we would go, and a big table was prepared, and we had lunch with Rinpoche together. And I was sitting next to Venerable Roger, next to Rinpoche, and we had lunch. And there was this tiny little, this little insect. It looks like a bee, but it's kind of not dangerous, and it just stands in the air. You know these? They just kind of hover. It was all the time around Rinpoche's face, really close, and and I sat next to Rinpoche, and I thought it's a bit annoying, probably, right? this flying thing for minutes like that, and Rinpoche would just do like this, just shake the head a little bit, and I felt the need to kind of do like that, But I kind of, and then after, I think Rinpoche noticed, and then he bent over and he said, "This bee is putting a sting in my self-cherishing thought. It's putting a sting in my self-cherishing thought." And he kept repeating it over and over. And then Deepak Ji, our director, he jumped up and he said, "No, putting a sting in my self-cherishing thought." And I'll never forget that one. That kind of echoes like that. And another time, because I received ordination with Rinpoche in 22 in a November course. And my mother was there also, and a lot of Austrian center people from the center in Austria.
Ich auch.
Und du auch, yes. But I remember from the center side, from the Austrian MT center, we had a short audience with Rinpoche and made some offerings. And my mother made apple strudel, because Rinpoche really liked apple strudel. Because Rinpoche, of course, manifested the aspect of having diabetes, so not being able to have sugar. But apple strudel is, of course, sweet, right? Very naturally sweet. So, and my mother extra took some flour from Austria to Nepal to make apple strudel, because with the Nepali flour, you can't really do it, you don't really get there. So she made this apple strudel, and we went up, and Roger said, "Yeah, we can offer, but we cannot have the apple strudel because Rinpoche is very busy." So yes, of course, we just offer, right? And then we offered, and Rinpoche said, "Okay, let's bring plates." And, obviously, and then Rinpoche offered, and all of us know that Rinpoche takes a lot of time to offer. So Rinpoche would make prayers, and we do offering everyone had their piece of apple strudel, and Rinpoche started to offer for all the 6 realm sentient beings, right? The hell beings, and all the beings in the Preta realm, and all the beings in the animal realm, all the beings in the various places in the human realm, not only this universe, but all universes. And then also, when Rinpoche stopped, didn't continue. And we were like, and after a while, Rinpoche didn't continue, Rinpoche just sat there with eyes closed. And we sat like that for 2-3 minutes, maybe a bit longer, which was a very long time. And then Rinpoche manifested this holy snore, maybe. Just a little bit of like that. And we sat like that for quite a while. And then I thought, maybe Rinpoche fell asleep, but maybe not. It was a quite nice moment, like intimate. We're just sitting there like that, 20 people, silence for a long time. And suddenly Rinpoche said, and all the surahs and all the asuras, I just continued offering it. Like just picked up right there. And I was like, just continued. And then we had the apple strudel. But it was incredible, you know. Anyway, it's just small things. But you can really feel, you know, it's just this. That's always what, of course, I mean, besides so many things, that what always touched me so much is that whenever I was with Rinpoche, it was always completely, whatever Rinpoche said, in the most humorous way, always about the Dharma. So, that's this incredible quality that struck me from the beginning with Rinpoche, that Rinpoche had this amazing gift, obviously, to put everything in this humorous, wonderful way, to give a teaching that kind of touches your heart, to kind of open something up a little bit. So that really worked for me, especially Rinpoche's humor really, really worked for me so much in that way. Anyway.
Sarah, would you like to add something?
No,
Okay. Anybody else met Rinpoche would like to share a story?
I think Minoti.
Minoti? Okay. Yes? Do you have a story in mind?
So many stories.
So many stories, yeah. Yes, Venerable, many stories. I think probably two short stories. One is when I met Rinpoche here at Tushita for the very first time. And my mother had just passed a month ago. And it was the first time I was meeting Rinpoche. And I remember we were in the driveway with flower petals and a lot of us on both sides, all his students. 2018.
I think I was here that time, and there were
Yeah.
beautiful lights.
Yeah, beautiful
Venerable
lights,
Samson was
and
here, and
Venerable Samson was
she organized
here.
it incredibly beautifully.
Yes, and we all had incense,
Oh, it
and
was very special.
it was my first in-person meeting Rinpoche. And my first impression as Rinpoche got off was his smile. And then he walked and he just kept laughing all the way. He would stop, look at us, and give a laugh. And stop and give a laugh. And just by that walk in, right, he just transformed all of us. It's like he took something from us and he gave us something else. I'll never forget, just with that laughter and that eye contact. I don't know what, I just felt I had shed so much. And I remember he was at Tushita in 2019, I think, in Dharamshala. And I'd seeked an audience with him, and he was very busy. And then he had a long life puja for his teacher, for Rato Rinpoche. He had a long life puja.
Mm.
You weren't there, yeah.
Yeah.
Ale, yes.
I'll never forget that.
Yes,
That was very special.
that was very special.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicola. Yes, that was very special. And that laughter. And so I was at Tushita and I was seeking an audience, and he didn't know I was seeking an audience. And I wrote to Venerable Roger and I gave him a slip during the puja, during the long life puja. And there is no way Rinpoche would have known. And when he was seeing off his teacher, he saw him off. We all came after the puja to see him off. And I was on the side at the back. So Rinpoche saw him off, and then Rinpoche turned around and walked straight to me and said, "Till when are you here?"
Yeah.
How was he even to know that I had just written a note to Rajarla during the puja? There was absolutely no way there could have been any physical communication. That's all. He just said, "Till when are you here?" And I think I just looked at Rinpoche and said, "Rinpoche, till you're here." And then he said, "Okay, come see me after half an hour." It was,
Really?
what is there to, how do you explain that? He knew us so well. I don't think we know ourselves as well as he knew us. I mean, that's...
Anybody else here met Rinpoche would like to share stories? Did you meet Rinpoche? No?
Nico?
Renuka, maybe you have more stories? You have so many stories.
Nico, you tell some stories.
So, yeah, there are two stories that I usually mention. So sorry, many people here have already heard them. But yeah, when I think about Rinpoche and I'm asked to say something about Rinpoche, that's what I usually share. The first story is when I first met Rinpoche also. It was a Kopan course, November course, and Venerable Tupten Gyatso was teaching the Dr. Adrian, the Australian monk. So we had Lamrim teachings with Venerable Gyatso for about 2 weeks, and then Rinpoche came to teach. So I had never met Rinpoche. I had so many stories, read books about Rinpoche. I was not a Buddhist then. I was contemplating. And so the day Rinpoche came, I think from Singapore, we all lined up, to welcome Rinpoche with katas. And yeah, that day was really, I think that day really changed my life. Because, yeah, I mean, I was not a Buddhist. I didn't have much faith. I was just interested in, listening and see the Buddha's point of view and so forth. But I didn't have inside of me, was not really convinced yet, I needed to study more and so forth. And so Rinpoche came, everybody offered kata. Rinpoche put the kata around everybody's neck. And also Rinpoche gave a blessing to everyone like this on the head. And when Rinpoche gave that blessing, I kind of thought I was going to faint. I don't know what was in that blessing. And yeah, I had to sit down. I was about to fall otherwise. And then I was with a girlfriend who received the same blessing and just could not stop crying. And I asked, why are you crying? And she told me, he looked at me the way nobody ever looked at me, without any kind of judgment. She was a little bit of a mischievous girl, there was no any kind of judgment in his look, in his eyes, only pure love and compassion for me. And nobody ever looked at me like that. And then that same day, very late at night, Rinpoche was going around the stupas, and the stupas in the Kopan. And a small group of us were following Rinpoche. Maybe, 5, 10, 15 people, something like that. And we're just following Rinpoche, going around the stupas, and then Rinpoche pretended to notice us, like turning around and saying, "Oh!" And Rinpoche started teaching for maybe 1 hour. That was the first time I was hearing Rinpoche's words, and we were literally sitting at Rinpoche's feet. I was sitting next to his shoes, like that was incredible. And so Rinpoche for 1 hour talked about the Lamrim in the context of how one can circumambulate the stupas and with which attitude and what we can do when we are doing that, which mantras, which prayers, and so forth. And to take an example of mantra that we can recite going around the stupa, he looked at me and he said, for example, you can recite Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. You know it, right? This was the only mantra I knew. So from the very first time Rinpoche spoke to me, he showed me his clairvoyance, his omniscience. So I was totally hooked and convinced from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So this is the first story. The second story. Many years later, I was a monk at Nalanda Monastery, and I invited my mother to come with me to India and Nepal for a pilgrimage to the Buddha's holy sites. And my mother had never been to Asia. And so I thought I'll need to prepare this well. And at the same time, Venerable Elizabeth from Kalachakra Center in Paris, she asked me to also not do it only for my mother, but also for a group of French people. So this took me quite some time to prepare while I was at the monastery, on top of the studies and the IT I was doing there, preparing prayers, preparing itineraries and organizing transportation, all these things. So for about maybe 2 weeks before traveling, I didn't do my commitments. I was too busy. So then the first stop with my mother was, you were there, it was Kopan Monastery. Robina was teaching the November course. And so with my mother, we came for Rinpoche's and Kadrola's teachings. And so the first teaching with Rinpoche, on the way in the airport, I bought a stuffed animal of a sloth. Rinpoche was always talking about sloths. And so, wait. Yeah, you have already heard that story, I think so. So I offered this sloth to Rinpoche before he went to teach to the November course people. And Rinpoche brought it to the Gompa. And so before he started his lecture, Rinpoche took the sloth and started playing with it. And, I don't know how to say this in English, like he was moving the sloth around, moving the arms and waving with the sloth. And the first thing Rinpoche said was, this one wanted to say hello to everybody. And then Rinpoche turned to the right. I was sitting next to Rinpoche, like the ordained Sangha were sitting on Rinpoche's sides. And I was a monk back then. He looked at me and he said, what is your name? I think my face was more red than my robes. So embarrassed. And I said, Rinpoche, my name is Tupten Kunkien. Rinpoche started to laugh and said, Tupten means the teachings of the Buddha. Kunkien means omniscient or all-knowing. So he said, this monk has been enlightened since beginningless time. He doesn't need to study. He doesn't need to purify. He doesn't need to meditate. And this was Rinpoche's way. I think Rinpoche was the only being who was capable of giving me the push that I needed, For 2 weeks, I had not done my commitments because I was busy preparing for the pilgrimage. This was Rinpoche's way of telling me, you think you're going to achieve anything like this if you don't do your commitments? That's like the minimum you have to do, right? Mm. The same day I went around the stupa and did my commitments. I was so embarrassed, so... Of course, no, I think nobody knew what was happening. This was like Rinpoche's direct way of telling me, do your practices. So, yeah. And it happened several times in my life where it was difficult to do my commitments, too busy or too lazy, mostly, I guess. And that's one of the reasons when I was living at the monastery, I would come to Asia every winter to make sure I meet Rinpoche, and it gives me the, the boost that I need for the year. And yeah, of course, during COVID, could not meet Rinpoche. And so in 2023, I thought it's really time I see Rinpoche. I need this boost, I need this kick in the butt, to again restart properly. And yeah, I tried, but then Rinpoche was traveling when I was somewhere. Like he came here, but I was in Bodhgaya with Geshe-la in November 22. Then yeah, the following year didn't happen, and I thought, oh, it's okay, light of the path is gonna happen. Rinpoche will be there. Rinpoche will come to Dharamshala in May for the long life puja with His Holiness. I thought it's okay, it will happen, and eventually Rinpoche took the aspect of passing away, and this final teaching had the same effect.
Yeah.
The same day.
Yeah.
I mean, I made very strong commitments that day, and that I will do this and this in this life, and it had the same effect as if I had met Rinpoche and Rinpoche told me, do your practices. Yeah.
Rinpoche would often say, when he was giving teachings, he'd often and then he'd turn, sometimes turn to me or turn to you and say, how is it you say it? He said, you take things for granted. He would often tell us, we take things for granted. He would often say like that, how is it you say? Like pretending like that to make us think, take a lot of things for granted. I was just, when you told the story about me going to to see Rinpoche, Rinpoche would give life practices to people. So some people were kind of scared to ask Rinpoche. And then, like in my case, I didn't ask Rinpoche, they were just sent to me. So some students, Rinpoche just send them, right? And I'm like, but I already have all these things to do. And he said, we do those ones first. But I remember, so quite a few times I took down the notes, and people would write to Rinpoche and ask for these life practices. And this was basically like everything you needed to do for this life. And I think Rinpoche really respected when people asked for it, that they were really making that kind of commitment. And he would check thoroughly, and you would see he would say the name, and if there's any particular thing, and then he would go into meditation. And often Rinpoche hadn't met these people, he hadn't met them, and he would say, we may never meet this lifetime. So part of the dictation was, we may never meet again this lifetime, but please pay attention to this advice I've given you, because I've taken time out of my prayers and all the other things that I need to do to give you this advice. And then it would be exactly for the person. So this is completely unpredictable. Most traditions, in the Geluk, we have about 9 Nundro, and in the Nyingma Kagyu, they have generally 4, which is 5 different practices: refuge with prostrations, mandalas, and Vajrasattva. Yeah. So you have to do those 4, and then often you do them many times. Many times over you do the Nundro. So that's a common thing. But with Rinpoche, it was so specific. Like you might get 1,001 mandalas, and then 500 Sangata Sutra. Who even heard of that, right? And then 100,000 or 500,000 Tonglen. We didn't even know these things existed. As an Nundro, these not even commonly understood Nundro, and it was totally specific to the person. And I remember sometimes Rinpoche would be throwing the most, saying, "Oh, I can't find anything this person needs to do, nothing." And then other times it would be like millions, and Rinpoche would be looking at me and say, "I hope they don't have a heart attack when they get this." And he would literally dictate, "My dear, I hope you don't have a heart attack when you receive this advice. I hope they don't have to pick you off the floor and rush you to emergency. Just do what you can do, because it would be kind of too many things you could even imagine doing in one lifetime. But then when we'd finished the letter and the specific advice in the letter, Rinpoche would look at me and he would say, you know, if they can do this, then from life to life to life, they will always be guided. So I always hoped that people understood the importance, how much Rinpoche respected the people that asked for advice, and how important it is to do the advice. So I know, like for me, after Rinpoche passed away, my priority became doing the prayers for Rinpoche. As I say, Rinpoche's whole life did prayers for all of us, but also to try and finish that life advice, because Rinpoche put such store on it. And not only that, but there were people who asked Rinpoche for life advice and didn't get it back before he passed away. And now they're like, I didn't get it. You know, so often it would come up when Rinpoche was giving talks, you know, taking things for granted. We take too many things for granted. We always thought Rinpoche would be there, but as Roger told us afterwards, he knew of several occasions when Rinpoche had been throwing them out, checking if it was more beneficial for him to stay or to go. So for us, it came as a big shock when Rinpoche left, but I don't think that it was Rinpoche was fully cognizant that, you know, when it was the right time to go, he would go. Yeah. So anyway, I thought I just mentioned that. Yeah. That's an hour. That's
I think we still have like maybe 5-10 minutes before the chai comes
oh,
down.
5 minutes before.
Maybe I can share.
And I just wanted, because Wangdu was talking about the sloth. That,
Sloth.
you know,
Sloth
the
sentient being. Rinpoche would often say, I'm a sloth sentient being.
yeah.
And even in Boulder at the Kora, Rinpoche would come down to the Kora, and sometimes he would come and it wouldn't be announced, no one would know. And then, you know, you would bump into, or you would happen to, hopefully you would be there and you would see Rinpoche and then send out the message. And then by the time Rinpoche finished doing Kora, like everyone on the Kora was just walking around following Rinpoche. And he went into the art shop, you know, the Tanka, Enlightenment Tanka one time, and he wrote on this piece of thing, I am a sloth sentient being. Rinpoche often say because he did everything slowly. So I think Rinpoche doing everything slowly, and remember he was had thousands and thousands of students, many close students, thousands of students, and 140 centers, and even more projects, and far more, all kinds of different things, other traditions, and so much going on that we didn't even comprehend a fraction of it, and yet everything was done slowly. And me, when I have a few things to do, I'm rushing around like can't keep up, and everything was done slowly and carefully. Slow sentient being.
So, you know, this stuffed sloth
Yeah,
animal
what
that I offered
happened
to
to the
Rinpoche,
sloth?
Venerable Wangdu was saying it's still there in the Gompa. So what happened is that, yeah, Rinpoche brought it to the Gompa, the Chenrezi Gompa. I think it was the first year after it had been rebuilt, right?
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. And the sloth stayed on the teacher's table in that Gompa for, I think, 2 or 3 years, until eventually, I think, Annie Joan, when she was giving courses there, she thought the sloth, it has big eyes. She thought it's staring at me and it's judging me. So she asked Kadro, Venerable Kadro, she was the SPC at the time, to take it away. And so the sloth was in Kadro's office. And then, so the day Rinpoche took the aspect of passing away, I immediately flew from here to Kathmandu. It's easy from here in Delhi. And I asked the Gompa keeper, I said, I've seen the sloth during COVID. I know it was in this Gompa for many years because and whenever there was a teaching happening in this Gompa, I would see it on the video. And he said, yes, but a few weeks ago it disappeared. I don't know where it is. So eventually Joan told me the story and she said, Kadro has it. So I mentioned it to Kadro and she said, Nico, do you want it back? And I give it a thought and I thought, you know what? Maybe. And now it's here with me in Delhi in my room, staring at me, reminding me to practice.
Brought it.
Yeah, sorry, didn't think about it.
You feel judged or you feel motivated by its there?
I don't feel judged.
Who felt judged?
Joan, Annie Joan.
Oh, Annie Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, Annie Jones.
Because no, she said it was not judged, but like it had scary big eyes, you know.
I don't
Actually, Minoti brought it to me
Really?
from Kathmandu. Yeah.
No, I don't remember.
Nico told me it's
Anika drew.
Kadros, please bring it. So even when I saw it for the first time, the big eyes looked at me.
Well, what I can say is I just saw that now today the book is published of Rinpoche's Soft Toys. Yeah, so it's actually, there was a picture of Nick holding it, and I can tell you just before Rinpoche left for Tsum, so like I think it was 2 nights before Rinpoche invited me for dinner, but I had been to see him the day before, and both the day before when we had tea with him, and the next evening when Rinpoche invited me up, he insisted, he had all these soft toys all around the bed, all lined up, and there were a lot of them, and he insisted that I read every single one. Every single one of them. Pick it up, read it. And I'd done it the day before. We went up with Steve. I'd done it. He insisted every single one we had to read the little message. And there's a story behind that because, Annie Jan used to write I think Rinpoche came up with the slogans, and then I think Elsie used to edit them, and Annie Jan would write them. So it seems that Rinpoche had been telling her just before they went to Tsum, he'd been saying, you must finish. And Jan hardly slept. She did 15 hours non-stop writing all these messages because Rinpoche insisted, you must finish because I'm leaving. And Jan was like, yeah, but we're only going up to Tsum and back again. It's only 3 days. But Rinpoche, no, you must finish. And so she finished, and she says he's leaving, so I have to finish. So she was up hours and hours and hours writing out these slogans and putting them all around, and then of course Rinpoche left, and then she understood why Rinpoche had said that. But there's always one of them that will stick out to you, and I think the one that stuck out for me was there was one that said most people love those who are kind to them, something like that. Cherish those who love them. I cherish those who harm me, something like this. I get enlightened faster. It was something like that, and that really stuck out to me because you have these experiences. I remember one time, when I'd been staying at Maritika. Afterwards, I found out that the manager had cheated me. He'd been cheating me for about 2 years. You always feel bad when you find that out, right? Someone you trusted, and then you find out. And I was like, "Wow, how dare they do this? How dare they do this?" Of course, Rinpoche would call out. He would get so upset with me. How can you say like that? Every day, you're offering your body, speech, and mind to sentient beings. Praying to be wish fulfilling, and there we are. He was able to get what he needed from you. You should see how precious and kind the manager was, how kind he was to you. For Rinpoche, there was no, that's a nice teaching, but you can't really practice it. No, you must practice it. You must practice it. And I also remember one time at Maritika, and Rinpoche was talking about the 8 worldly dharmas and the 10 kadampas, So these are very, very extraordinary teachings that, the 10 kadampas, it's basically, do you know these 10 kadampa teachings? Oh, okay, 10 innermost jewels of the kadampas. Do you know them? Maybe you could, or someone could give a teaching on them. Rinpoche actually did teach them. He taught them at the place where, in Bodhgaya, at the place where Prince Siddhartha practiced asceticism for 3 years. He taught the 10 innermost jewels several times. It's not something lamas teach. And it's really unremorseful that basically you totally give yourself to the practice. You completely sacrifice yourself to the practice. And if that means you become a beggar, if that means you go without food, if that means people look down on you and they mistreat you and you're cast out of society, it doesn't matter. You will become the highest deity because you'll achieve enlightenment. So I remember we were at Maritika, which is a Guru Rinpoche holy place, and Rinpoche was talking about there were some people that are genuinely practicing. There were genuine practitioners there, which means they never think about money, they never think about gain for themselves, they never think about, they never worry about loss, never worry about gain, never care if people criticize or harm, never care whether there's suffering, happiness. They've completely equalized these 8 worldly dharmas and practicing the 10. And I remember saying to Rinpoche, so embarrassing, I said, well, of course, in the old days that worked. And Rinpoche looked, the old days? And then I said, well, if you're Tibetan or you're a Nepali or something, yeah, people will take care. But, for Westerners, that's difficult for us to just completely. Rinpoche was so mad at me. He said, this works for everyone. If you, meaning, if you truly sacrifice yourself for the Dharma, if you truly do not care about, wanting happiness more than suffering, wanting praise more than criticism, wanting, what are they all? Wanting pleasure, pain, wanting a good reputation more than a bad reputation. And what's the last one? Gain more than loss. If you truly don't care about anything but practice, you'll always be supported. Always. It doesn't matter. You are Westerner, you are foreigner. I'm just scathing about that. I mean, really scathing about that. And I want to say that, I ordain now. I just dug out a photo. So one of my ordination sisters just showed me a photo from back then. It was the first day of 1986. So I took Rabjang from Yeshe and, the going forth in 85. So this is 40 years ago now, right? And I had $100 in my pocket, 100 pounds. I had 100 pounds. I'm still around, right? I have never not had a place to sleep or food to eat. And I truly believe that, if you are a follower of Lama Rinpoche, you will always be taken care of. If you practice, the practice is the refuge. Practice now is Rinpoche. Rinpoche always was the practice he gave us, but now it's all in the practice. But for Rinpoche, it wasn't about like, oh yeah, we practice thought transformation, but not with those who really harm us. It was, no, you practice thought transformation with the ones that harm you. That is what it is. Yeah, anyway, so that's enough, yeah? And then, so I just wrap it up. No, this past incarnation was the founder. So he was, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche were the founders. And I was fortunate to, did you meet Lama Yeshe? Yeah.
Only once in my life.
Yeah, so we're fortunate to be able to actually meet the founders.
And he blessed me that day.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that he was hooking me for Tushita.
Interesting, right?
Can you believe that?
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't spend a lot of time with Lama. I did take refuge with Lama and receive teachings and initiations and things. But Rinpoche was always my main teacher. But they were founders, so they were the ones that really established FBMT. And we pray for Rinpoche's incarnation. We don't know what the next manifestation will be, but this particular manifestations were extremely special. And after Rinpoche passed away, Yangtze Rinpoche came to Kopan and he gave a talk. And in that talk, he mentioned that there are many qualified lamas and masters and Rinpoches in this world and in the Kopan monasteries, but none of them had the karma that Rinpoche and Lama had to hook so many disciples from so many different countries in this world and establish the Dharma in those places. So it's very, very special.
I would like to just suggest to everyone, if you want to get a glimpse of Rinpoche, please read the book Big Love, 2 volumes, especially through the eyes of Lama Yeshe. My God, it has such a profound effect on you for your practice. It's a very, very inspiring book. the autobiography, the biography of Lama Yeshe.
Wow.
It's called Big Love, 2 big volumes.
It's a great place to finish.
And we have it here. Yeah. But
Copies?
I also want to
Wow.
share something about Rinpoche's toys. Once Rinpoche was staying with me, and the actor Richard Gere came to have dinner with us to meet Rinpoche. And what Rinpoche had done was he would pick up a toy every day, and one of our couches was full of toys. So Richard came and he said to me, Renuka, your house, it has got these beautiful things, but I'm wondering, what are these toys doing over here? And I said, these are Rinpoche's toys. Rinpoche plays with them. Oh, he was so amused.
We went to Taiwan. Indonesia. Indonesia, Rinpoche, 2010, I think it was. Rinpoche was teaching in Jakarta. He was teaching Lama Zopa, and one of the students there imported soft toys, and so Rinpoche's whole apartment was full of soft. There are hundreds, right? Hundreds of these soft toys. And by the time Rinpoche had left, they'd all gone. And he were given out to the maids, they were given out to the students, each one individually. And you'd see these Indonesian maids, and of course they're all Muslim, they're Muslim in that country, but they come away with this toy with a little message about cherishing sentient beings, and they'd be so happy, they'd be coming out with this toy. And there were those of us, like the so-called older students who came for the Lama Zopa, and we'd all be like, oh, I wish I could have that one. and then each time he came to his apartment, more had been given away, and like, well, that one's still there, but then that would be given to somebody. So we didn't get any. But hundreds of these toys, they were all given away. Yeah, everything was given away with Rinpoche. Everything. It came in one hand, went out the other hand. Even when Rinpoche didn't have it. You remember the story about how somebody offered money to Rinpoche, and let's say it was $30,000, and Roger came to see Rinpoche and said, Rinpoche, has just offered $30,000, what should we do? And Rinpoche starts throwing the mo, and he said, okay, 6,000 for here, and 7,000 for this monastery, and 6,000 for this project, and 7,000 for that project, and this and this and this, and throws the mo again. And then he looks at Roger and he says, so how are we doing? And Roger says, well, we've given away 3 times what we were given. Rinpoche, can we cut it down? And Rinpoche said, no, go and borrow the rest and give it away.
Wow, it was really amazing to be.
Yeah. And then the Mo's was another story. And you know the famous one about Land of Medicine Buddha, this huge center that Rinpoche was given, but it was enormous, and it's not self-sustainable. And so for years and years and years, it was always teetering on the edge. And they were constantly having board meetings and deciding, are we going to keep it? Are we going to sell it? Are we going to keep it? Are we going to sell it? Are we going to keep it? And then finally it got to the crunch point. And Roger came to see Rinpoche, said, Rinpoche, we have to finally make a decision about this. It's like now it must be a multi-million-dollar center. We have to make a decision whether to sell or buy. And Rinpoche kicked off one slipper. He kicked his slipper in the air, and it fell up. And he said, we're keeping it. And Roger looked at Rinpoche and said, Rinpoche, this is a serious this is a serious discussion. This is a very big decision. And Rinpoche said, yes, the mo came out to keep it. And then, of course, there was the Maitreya land, which for years and years and years was an enormous thing, and it was incredible, agonizing, stressed out, extraordinary thing, because Rinpoche wanted to stop all these wars, which we now have. All these problems we have in the world, Rinpoche 30 years ago, 40 years ago, wanted to stop them by building this Maitreya statue. And we didn't get it, and so you had this years and years and years of stress and travail and everything like that. And then finally, just before Rinpoche passed away, His Holiness Office, just chatting, asked Rinpoche, what do you think? Would you, about us using that land to make what I think will be the most important legacy of His Holiness, you know, one of the great, I think this will go down as one of the greatest, of all Rinpoche's activities, I think this will go down as one of the greatest activities of Rinpoche, amongst, you know, the great ones. What would you think about us using the land to make the Dalai Lama Center, you know, archive, for now and for the future? What's it called? The Dalai Lama, anyway, it's the Legacy Center. So it's the place that will hold and store all the teachings and all the advice that's been given by this present Dalai Lama, who's surely one of the greatest in terms of the enlightened activities through the whole world. What do you think about us, you know, potentially using some of that land, not even asking Rinpoche for it? And Rinpoche immediately gave it like that. And Roger said $40 million like that, given. $40 million like that, given. That's it. Not even asking. Rinpoche so happily giving it. So happily.
This was the best thing in his life. Rinpoche was so happy.
Rinpoche was so joyful. And then 2 times I saw Rinpoche. Only 2 times he talked about it that I saw in teachings. And he just under his breath just mentioned that they went to see His Holiness to formally give the land in Bodhgaya, to formally hand it over. And His Holiness had called the office, the important people in the office, to be present. And Rinpoche very humbly, you know, offered it to His Holiness. And Rinpoche then described how he said, I never knew it was possible that His Holiness could be so pleased with me. And, you know, that was for Rinpoche, if you can please the Guru, there's nothing higher. Everything comes from that. And Rinpoche was just shaking his head, saying, I never knew that it was possible that His Holiness could be so pleased with me, show so much affection and pleasure with me. And I mean, that was just shortly before Rinpoche passed. And so for me, it was very clear that, you know, when His Holiness said, you know, I will personally take responsibility for the next incarnation. And Rinpoche always did everything that I wanted, even beyond. I mean, $40 million, boom, like that, not even asked.
In fact, you know, this was my last meeting with Rinpoche at the Root Institute. After the inauguration of the center there in Bodhgaya, we came back from there, and there was this controversy. People said, oh, they didn't, Rinpoche make you sit on the stage, and they didn't thank you. And I said, no, I met Rinpoche, and I said, Rinpoche, they thanked you twice. So, and Rinpoche was he said, really? I said, yes, Rinpoche, I heard it myself. It didn't matter to him, but it was, you know, an issue for all other students, the disciples.
Yeah.
And so I was going to leave for Delhi, and Rinpoche, I was going to have lunch with Rinpoche before catching my flight. But somehow Rinpoche was called for a meeting with His Holiness's office. So I went, and Rinpoche was not there, and Roger said, Renuka, I was trying to get in touch with you. Rinpoche had to go suddenly because of this. But what Rinpoche has done is, he has ordered the cooks to make these special things for you. And my God, that plate, you should have seen. That was the purest food I ever felt was there, which was offered to me. But the fact that Rinpoche was not there, believe me, that was the message. There was a certain kind of an emptiness I felt, and I knew Rinpoche was sending me a message. Believe me.
Yeah.
That was the first time it happened, that Rinpoche was not there for me. So then soon after that, you know,
Yeah.
things happened. Yeah. But yes, Rinpoche was extremely happy to offer the land to His Holiness.
Is it?
Yeah.
All that trouble was worthwhile. The Maitreya statue wasn't built, but you felt that all of that 40, 50 years of work and stress and trial and tribulation for Rinpoche, it culminated in that offering to His Holiness. And I think we haven't even comprehended how important that offering was. I truly think that was like the crown jewel in all Rinpoche's activities, despite the fact that Rinpoche did so much in so many countries, but that was very special because that's a legacy. That's the one that holds all of. And for Rinpoche, it was always about serving the Guru and His Holiness.
Speaking
So
of His
thank
Holiness, so one of the first, His Holiness said he's taking personal responsibility to find and identify the reincarnation of Rinpoche. And one of the first advice His Holiness gave to the disciples of Rinpoche is to recite this text, chanting the names of Manjushri, to keep on reciting this text. So now chai has arrived. We'll have a chai break, and then after the break, we will do that with Venerable Sarah. We'll recite this text together.
Thank you.
So please, people online, please
and thank you everyone who's online.
remain online.
We'll
We'll come back in about maybe, Sarah, half an hour break. Does that sound good?
Yeah, we have a half an hour break.
So we'll come back at 5:15, and please enjoy chai and snacks at the back for people who are here.
As I know everybody online, and I see some old friends and new friends, and I know that you all have your memories, and I'm sorry we can't build this into this session, but thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So on behalf of Tushita, Venerable Sarah, I am very, very grateful to you for accepting so graciously to give this session to us today and leading the prayer after the tea session.
Thank you.
Please accept this
Thank you
from
very
our
much.
side.
Thank you.
Humble offering.
And thank you.
And
for
come back
taking-
again.
Yeah. Thank you for taking care of the center.
Welcome.
This center is really a storehouse of memories. Yeah. Okay, you are in charge here. Everyone has chai.